Hello, everybody. Welcome back to When Down Syndrome Meets Autism. My name is Brandy, and I am so happy to see you here. For those of you who are new to this channel, I have a 15-year-old son that was born with Down syndrome and later diagnosed with autism. His name is Dale, and he is a wonderful, happy little boy. This video will be my top 3 most embarrassing moments as a mother. And let's be real here. Everybody that has kids has those embarrassing moments. I know when I was little, I said things on a few occasions I can still remember that made my mother want to crawl under a rock. And to this day, I'm 35 years old and my dad still will not tell me whatever he has bought other family members for Christmas because I have a big mouth. I can't help it. It's just something that happens. So these are my top 3 moments as a parent that made me want to crawl under a rock. Number 1 was on Dale's all-important first birthday. And this first birthday was a moment I would never forget. It was a moment that I dreamt about my entire life. So there was a photo studio at our local mall called The Picture People, and they made the coolest pictures on the planet. And for a child's first birthday, they let me know that you could buy a cake and they would strip the child down to the diaper and let them play in a cake and take pictures while they were doing it. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is a fantastic idea. So of course I go to my local bakery and buy a cake and get Dale and my mother and go to the photo studio. They take all of these other pictures beforehand, you know, Dale popping out of the big cardboard birthday cake, Dale with the big number 1 over to the side, you know, all of these great pictures. And then it's time to do the cake picture. So they strip Dale down to his diaper. They put out a big paper, kind of like a big cardboard piece or something, so it wouldn't get their studio all dirty. And they set the cake in front of Dale. And Dale looks at me after he's played with the cake for about a minute. And those of you that have kids know that you can look at your child's earlobe and know exactly what they're thinking. You know them that well. So Dale looks at me and I see this look on his face, and I know we have about 2 seconds before he is going to turn into the exorcist. And I don't think about it, but what he just ate about 30 minutes before was creamed spinach. So I jump up and I run over there to grab him, and right when I grab him, creamed spinach just flies everywhere. And it's all going down my hair, it's going down my back, it's hitting the camera. It actually probably would have been a pretty neat picture if they would have gotten it, but the photographer was fantastic. She was incredibly professional and she didn't vomit or get upset or anything, but I didn't realize that somebody that small could hold that much stuff. He vomited so much creamed spinach that I thought it was never ending. So we fixed the aftermath. It's awful. It's a horror show in there. My mother runs across the way and gets me a new outfit at the store that's across the hall from us. We get everything cleaned up. The photographer is gracious and wonderful. Unfortunately, we didn't get any pictures of him playing in the cake before the vomit session. But when we looked back, Dale has a lot of sensory issues. And those of you that deal with sensory issues with your children, or even maybe with yourself, understand that something can set off it and it can lead to a meltdown, it can lead to a tantrum, it can lead to vomiting, it can lead to blotching. There are so many things that sensory issues do. And Dale's sensory issues were terrible whenever he was younger. Thankfully, they've gotten a little bit better as he's gotten older. But back then, he couldn't touch anything like shaving cream, whipped cream, puddings, yogurts, nothing like that. For some reason, especially when it got in his mouth, it was just too much and it set off his gag reflex. So we were really careful for a long time after that. And even now, I'm really careful. They were painting with shaving cream at school a few months ago, and they would add colors to the shaving cream and let the kids finger paint with it. And I was really, really worried about how Dale was going to react to that, but thankfully he did okay with it. So I think a lot of the therapies and a lot of the things we've done to help him have really moved him past a lot of the sensory problems he had as a baby. Of course, I'm just a mother. I am not an expert in any way on these. I'm just relating my experiences with them. So that was my number 1 horror story. My number 2 horror story takes place at our local Red Lobster. And this is a place that Kevin, my husband, and I like to go once in a while, and Dale absolutely loved it. So we took him there a lot with us when we went. So Dale's probably between 3 and 4, and mind you, Dale was really small for his age, so he sat in a high chair for a long time. And at this point, you know, most kids would be in a booster seat by now, but Dale was still in a high chair at the end of the table. And I can remember this so absolutely clearly. We were in a booth in the middle of the restaurant. Dale was in his high chair. It was cold outside, so we all had jackets with us, and we were all wearing long sleeves and bundled up, and it was a dreary, drizzly day outside. And actually, my dad was in the hospital at the time. My dad had just had a heart attack, so we were planning on eating lunch and then going to visit Dad at the hospital. So, excuse me, I've got something in my eye. So we end up eating our lunch, and the waiter is a relatively new waiter, and he keeps holding his tray over Dale's head. And Dale's so quick, whenever he moves, a lot of times you can't stop him. So I asked him on multiple occasions not to hold the tray over Dale's head. And he just kept doing it. And I know the poor guy was nervous, but come on now, listen to me. I know what I'm talking about when it's my kid. So lo and behold, we have our food, we're eating, everything's good, and the guy comes up with the tray, and it's full of red wine and beer. And Dale reaches up and grabs it. So in an instant, red wine and beer go all over him, all over the guy behind us, all over us. The bottle and the really heavy mug hit Dale on the head. It's just a horrible experience. The beer also soaks the diaper bag and all of the clothes that we have as a change. So there's nothing we can change him into besides his coat. So we do that. We get out of there. The manager was really nice. He comped our meal. He comped the meal behind us. Everything was good. Hopefully the waiter was counseled not to do that again. And lo and behold, we didn't have anything to put Dale in. So we take off his clothes and we put his jacket on him, which does happen to look like a really thick sweatshirt. But unfortunately, we all smelled like a brewery. So we had to take our child to the local hospital to visit my dad and all of our family, smelling awful. And there's no mistaking that smell of rotten beer whenever it's on somebody. Any of you that have been to a college keg party know exactly what I'm talking about. So when we got home, we gave Dale a shower, all was good, and we didn't go to Red Lobster for a while after that. Number 3 is less of everybody else and more of me kind of being a butthead. And as much as I hate to admit it, it does happen. We were at a restaurant, again, we like to eat out, of course, and we were in the small town where my grandmother lives. And this town is so small, it only has about 3,000 people in it. There is a Mexican restaurant there that my grandmother just absolutely loved. And it's probably the only Mexican restaurant for about 60 miles all around. So we go have lunch there. It is myself, my great-grandmother, who was nearing 100 years old at the time, my grandmother, my mother, and Dale. And for some reason, every time we take Dale to this restaurant, he doesn't like it. He gets really, really upset and really cranky and just doesn't like the restaurant. And he's probably about 7 at the time. So he's out of the high chair, but he also has this issue that whenever he's sitting at a table and he decides he's done eating, he just gets up and walks off. And also he kind of, will bother other people. So we decide to sit him in a booth, and that way we can trap him on the inside of the booth. And when he's done eating, he has to still sit and wait until we get done. And to help this not be a horrible situation, I always have a full bag of entertainment for Dale. Usually I'll bring a DVD, I'll bring colors, coloring books, markers, toys, cards, anything I can think of to help pass the time for him. So we've gone through everything in the bag and he's just not happy. And our food is taking an extremely long time coming out because it's right after church in a small town. So everybody in the entire town, it seems like, is eating lunch in this restaurant. At this time, they set this gentleman behind us. And it's an older man and woman, I would say probably in their 70s. By the way they were dressed, you could tell they'd just gotten out of church and they were extremely cranky. They were sitting directly behind Dale and I, and the man just complained the whole time. Nothing was good enough for him. He was just one of those people. So Dale is bouncing at this point. Dale really likes to bounce. And the booths, the way they're done, are connected. So my booth is connected to the booth right behind us. So as Dale's bouncing up and down in the chair, the gentleman behind me is bouncing up and down in the chair too. And I can tell he's not happy about it. So I get Dale to calm down. And then the next thing I know, Dale starts doing this thing. So the man's taking a drink of his iced tea and pours it all down his front. So he starts complaining about how kids today have no manners, parents today don't watch their children, blah, 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 all that stuff you hear 100 times. So I'm just listening to this at this point and letting it roll off my feathers because he's just a grump. But then it gets a little bit more pointed and it starts to really get under my skin because Dale at this point turns around, pops up over the booth and looks at the guy, and the guy does not like that at all. So I get Dale to turn back around and I focus on trying to eat my meal and get out of this place so there's not a scene started. And my grandmother at this point is giving me the death look, like, you know, chain him up, do something, make him quit, because that's just how she was. So I'm eating my meal and this man starts talking about how kids should not be let out of cages like this. And they need to be chained up. They need to be put in a cage. They need to be put away somewhere. The parents don't know what they're doing. The kids should be, you know, locked up in a closet, blah, blah, blah. And at this point, I'm getting angry. It's no longer rolling off my feathers. So finally, the guy likens Dale to a monkey, and I jump up. And I jump in front of his booth, and I am just wild-eyed, angry, mad. And I say, I suppose you think I should buy a dog kennel for him and just lock him up in there and forget him. Or maybe I should stick him in an institution. Or maybe he should have just been drowned at birth because he's bothering you and your $2.99 enchilada meal. And I was furious at this point. And my grandmother is sitting there just absolutely mortified. My great-grandmother is sitting there with a big smile on her face because she has no clue what's going on. My mother's smothering a giggle because she knows exactly what's going on. And the man just looks at me with wide eyes and says, I could care less about that, but could you please make him quit hitting me with this? And I look at what he's holding in his hand, and it is a Elmo and Grouchland DVD. And Dale apparently had been up over the booth whacking the guy on the head with the DVD case, and I didn't even realize it because I was trying to eat my meal. So I didn't say anything else. I grabbed Dale and ran for the front door, and I was sobbing at this time because I was so embarrassed and I was so upset. So I get outside, I get in the car, I get Dale in the car, I cry some more and just brushed it off. And we didn't go out to dinner for a really long time after that because I was so upset and I was so embarrassed, and I realized I was a little oversensitive about it. And thankfully I haven't ran into those people in the little town we live in a long time either. So those are my 3 embarrassing stories. And I would love to hear any of yours when you're maybe a little too tired as a parent or a little too stressed out and you might do something that's a little bit embarrassing. Or the kids do something that's embarrassing because you know as well as I do, kids do and say the darndest things. Thank you so much for tuning in. I would love for you to give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and I would love for you to subscribe to my channel because we've got lots of other things coming up. Thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend.